Hello, this is Julie Tans, one of the CERT instructors for Clackamas Fire District 1. Today you're going to be reviewing disaster psychology. The agenda for today is stabilizing survivors, psychological and physiological symptoms of trauma. There are 6 emotional phases of a disaster: empathetic listening, self-care, critical incident stress debrief, and peer support.
In an emergency or disaster situation, injuries can occur, so having skills in basic first aid is absolutely essential for any responder. But what about the injuries that we can't always see, such as the psychological injuries? Using psychological first aid in a disaster situation can be a vital first response. And here are 4 basic actions you can use to perform psychological first aid. Begin by meeting victims' basic physical needs, such as protection, clothing, shelter, and food. This can greatly reduce psychological distress. Next, try to meet the psychological needs by providing emotional support and by allowing victims to talk about their experience should they choose to do so. Reunite victims with family or friends as soon as possible to strengthen social and community support networks. And finally, be sure that those with acute psychological needs are referred for ongoing care to the appropriate provider. Regardless of whether you're working in a medical needs shelter or any other setting, understanding the basics of psychological first aid can help you help others. Now, for more information, please visit the website. With your Preparedness Minute, I'm Dr. Josh Claypo.
So for traumatic crisis, it's an event experienced or witnessed when people's ability to cope with that experience is overwhelmed. And it's overwhelmed by actual or potential death or injury to the self or others. There's serious injury. There can be destruction of homes, neighborhood, or value possessions, and loss of contact with family or close friends. So in this situation, there could be a fire, a flood, earthquake, car accident, anything that would bring on trauma for the person and possible destruction of what they value in their home, and that they may lose contact with family or close friends. So there are emotional phases of a crisis. There's the pre-disaster anxiety. For example, you know a hurricane is coming. There's going to be a flood, a fire is approaching. You feel anxious and the people around you are feeling anxious because it's coming. There's the impact of the disaster. The flood has hit you. The fire is in your neighborhood. The hurricane has hit you. The tornado has come. There are heroic acts by people, whether they're fellow survivors or emergency services people, but people who go out of their way to help others. They put others above themselves. The honeymoon phase, everybody is fine as can be. They have found each other. They're assessing what they have. They know that things are going to get better from that point on. However, disillusionment can set in, the disillusionment of the survivors. Help isn't coming fast enough. Why aren't they clearing my neighborhood? Why aren't the streets clear? I don't have phone service. They're never going to help us. Then the reconstruction does start. Services come back, roads are cleared, people are there to help you with getting back on your feet. So there's survivor responses. There's several phases of it. There's stop, look, and listen, or you're on guard and you're watchful. You're looking around you, you can hear something doesn't look right, and you stop in place. Flight, you get out of there. You know the situation is bad and you want to move fast. Fight, well, you've decided to stay and combat the threat. Fright, You can become immobile when in contact with that threat, whether it's intentionally playing dead or you just freeze in place. It's beyond stop, look, and listen. You can't move anymore, or faint. There's fear-induced loss of consciousness from what happened to you. Stabilizing survivors. This is where you're assessing survivors for injury or shock, and you can bring in uninjured people to help you with the survivors. The image below was taken in Las Vegas as an aftermath of the Mandalay Bay shooting. It was at a country festival across the street from the hotel. Provide support for these people by listening to them and empathizing with them. They're hurting emotionally. You can help with their injuries, but by listening to them and empathizing with them, you're helping them survive. And help the survivors connect with natural support systems, such as the clergy or the Red Cross. Listen, protect, and connect. Listen to those survivors and pay attention to what they're saying as well as what they're not saying. This is where cueing into their body language can really help you understand their needs. Help those survivors feel protected by providing that support, by listening to them, connecting them with services. Help them feel that they're in good hands, and connect those survivors to friends and loved ones if possible. How to be an empathetic listener. Put yourself in the speaker's shoes. What are they saying? What are they not saying? Listen for that meaning and not just words. Look at their body language. In the image below, the woman really isn't saying anything to the woman in distress. She just has an arm around her, and that may be all that distressed looking woman needs at that moment. Pay attention to the nonverbal communication and paraphrase the speaker. Repeat back what the speaker is saying so that the speaker is feeling like you understand them and you're listening to them. Effects of traumatic stress. Traumatic stress may affect a person's cognitive function, how they're thinking. Are they able to convey and put into words how they feel and how they're reacting? A person's physical health and interpersonal relationships. There may be anger, a suppression of emotions. The relationships may suffer because of the traumatic stress. When you're helping those survivors, there are words and phrases that you may be tempted to say, that you may say automatically, but they're the wrong things to say at that time. For example, I know how you feel, at least you still have, or it's God's will. Well, say these phrases instead. I'm sorry for your pain. I'm so sorry this has happened. Is it all right if I help you with? I can't imagine what this is like for you. What do you need? Physical symptoms of trauma. Just like there are psychological symptoms of a person suffering trauma, there can also be physical symptoms. The list below could include, but doesn't include everything: loss of appetite, headaches, chest pain, diarrhea, stomach pains, nausea, hyperactivity. There could be an increase in drug consumption, alcohol consumption, any kind of narcotics that could possibly take their mind off of what they're feeling, nightmares, insomnia where they can't sleep, fatigue where they're just so overwhelmed that's all they can do. Personal disaster reactions. You may be dealing with your own personal loss. For example, the wildfires we had in our area in 2020 may be something that you're dealing with in your own mind as a personal loss because it affected you. You would be working in your neighborhood possibly as a CERT volunteer, and you're going to be helping those neighbors or friends. You could be at your workplace and helping coworkers who've also been injured. You yourself could feel unsafe and insecure, while at the same time taking care of people who are feeling unsafe and insecure. Reducing trauma. Remember that CERT is a team-based organization. We help each other. We're teammates and we count on each other. So allow yourself to receive help or counseling or an arm around your shoulders just as much as you give to others. If you feel like you need to take a break, do so. Get away from the incident. Go for a walk. Go sit off to the side and reflect and collect yourself. It's okay to take a break. Be aware of the changes in the teammates around you. Are they becoming overly emotional? Are they withdrawing? Watch your teammates. Look out for them. And connect with personal resources, whether it's the clergy, a coworker, a fellow teammate, somebody who you can count on. Personal factors. Did you have a prior experience with a similar event that you're finding yourself responding to? It may result in a disruption of how you handle the current event. It may bring up individual feelings about this event. Think PTSD. It will tax your emotional strength, perhaps, and it could also be a factor of the length of time since that event. Take care of yourself. Be aware of the trauma to you personally that can follow a disaster. Talk about it to family members, what you need. Listen when you want to talk, and don't force yourself to talk until you're ready. Critical incidents. By definition, critical incidents are unusually challenging events that have the potential to create significant human distress and can overwhelm one's coping mechanisms. I'd like to point out the image below of the firefighter holding a child. It would not be too much of a stretch to imagine that this is causing him distress, and it may overwhelm his coping mechanism. Critical Incident Stress Debriefing, or CISD. This is a formal event that occurs after something has resolved one way or another. It brings together the responders or representatives of the responders. There's introductions and description of the event. They're going to go over factual material, not images, not impressions, just the facts. There's the sharing of initial thoughts and feelings about the event, sharing of emotional reactions to the incident, instruction about normal stress reactions and how you can cope with those stress reactions. There's a review of the symptoms you may feel, and in closing, urging people to get assessment if they need it. Also, this is private. What is said there stays there. The peer support system. This is different than critical incident stress debriefing. It's individuals, not groups, so it could be one-on-one. It could be a friend talking with a friend, a CERT member talking with another CERT member. It's directed toward individuals of similar characteristics or jobs. Think EMS responders, students, police, fire. They have similar backgrounds, so they would understand each other. And the peer support system brings credibility to the situation. That person understands what you're going through. They may have gone through it themselves, but they have a similar background as you do, so they may be in a position to understand more than somebody who wouldn't. But it's not a substitute for therapy. That may be a realistic situation.
Over 70 years ago, New York's rescue squads were created to rescue firefighters. Today, they're an elite team that uses special tools to pull victims out from under subway cars and from elevator shafts, from beneath burning cars and collapsed buildings. But on September 11th, their tools were of little help.
Most important tool that we carry is the one we carry on our shoulders, is our head. That you have to think. You have to be able to think and come up with solutions that take disaster. There was no training for that whatsoever. What happened on September 11th? Would you have done anything different?
Nah, probably all went in just like everybody else did. Like you said, people in there need help. You gotta get in there and help them out as best you can.
Right.
I think any firefighter in the country is gonna do the same thing.
Yeah. And there was no indication of a collapse in the first hour. From everything that we're hearing from guys who survived, the first indication it was over. Those who survived, luck, the grace of God. As we always say, expect the unexpected, but sometimes the unexpected gets you, and that's what happened. Nobody expected that.
For Rescue 3, any one of some 50 runs a week brings the unknown.
Unit summary. We've gone over stabilizing survivors, psychological and physiological symptoms of trauma, the 6 emotional phases of a disaster, empathetic listening, self-care, critical incident stress debriefing, and peer support.